Welcome back to the Plus Money Podcast. It is an international break episode, so we're going to jump in and do some catching up. We've got an EPL team that surprised us, EPL teams that disappointed us, and we'll talk about new signings so far that we're impressed with in the Premier League. We'll talk some futures now that we're 4 games under our belt and we're taking a little bit of a breather from the Premier League. And the Champions League draw is out. So we will dive into some early futures ahead of match day 1. We'll get them now. We'll get you guys ready for match day 1 when we get to it. But welcome back to the Plus Money Podcast, your home for the best soccer bets in 15 minutes or less. I'm Andrew Passaro. Ani is back. Had a nice little jaunt over in Europe. Did a little scouting for us, hypothetically. Probably not, but, always good to be on the same time zone as that. So thank you guys as always for following, for listening, for watching. At the Plus Money Pod, at Andrew Passaro, at Ani 323. And if you guys are watching on YouTube, if you don't mind hitting that subscribe and like button, always helps us out. Ani, it's been 4 games in. We've got a nice little test. We've got a nice little taste of what of the Premier League so far. There's still so much of the season. There's a lot that's going to happen. Overreaction season is in peak. It's peak overreaction season. But I'll throw it to you first. What EPL team has surprised you the most so far this year?
It's got to be Tottenham. Tottenham's just been really surprising early on. I actually did have them to finish in the bottom 10 as one of my futures bets at the beginning of the year. It was really, I could say that they really haven't played anyone. If you look at it, they beat Burnley, they beat Bournemouth, they drew with Brentford, and they beat Man U 2-0. And Man U obviously are not the team that we expected them to be either. So maybe they haven't played anybody yet, but they're taking care of business against the teams they should be beating. And that's something we couldn't say for Tottenham last year. So I'm impressed with what I've seen from Tottenham so far.
I agree, and I totally thought they were going to fall off a cliff without Harry Kane's goals. And then you look at him and Son's scoring; they're playing him as a number 9. You've got some of the new signings have come in and played well. The new system looks like that players are caught up, and I still think this is scary enough to say it, a team that hasn't spent all the money they got for Kane. So maybe a dip into the transfer window could really put them over the top. I did my updated rankings for the top 20 on TikTok this week, and I do have Tottenham making top 4. I doubt that number is anywhere close to a positive at this current moment, but that is something to consider. For me, it's West Ham. So 2 London clubs that have kind of blown it out of the water, both undefeated. West Ham 3-1-0. They get the big win over Chelsea. They beat Luton. They beat Brighton, which neither of us had on the card. We both got rocked that day. And they still haven't introduced 2 of their big signings post-Rice. Kudus hasn't been played yet from Ajax, and they signed a former Arsenal defender, Mavropanos, who's Greek from Stuttgart, who's supposed to be really good, hasn't played yet for them. So this is a team that still has pieces to add. So I got a couple things here that if you are bullish on West Ham like we are, they're minus 125 to win their Europa League group with Freiburg, Olympiacos, and FK Bakatopola, which I've never heard of, but I'm sure that's not going to be a fun flight to and from for them. A top half finish is still only minus 140, which seems very low for West Ham. Like, you could probably parlay a couple top half finishes together. You can get that over on FanDuel. And a top 6 finish is plus 550 on DraftKings right now. I don't think I'm going to take either of those because I do think West Ham will take Europa League seriously and that that'll eventually bog down their fixtures list. But they're playing good ball so far. In terms of teams that disappointed us, I have 2 on my card, but I'll let you kick it off as well here.
Yeah, and you said Tottenham top 4. You can get that at plus 175 right now. So
that's a good number. That's a great number.
Yeah, they're tied with Man U at plus 175 and Newcastle tied with Chelsea at plus 190. Speaking of Chelsea, probably the most disappointing team personally and in the league, just from the pure amount of money they've spent in the past few windows. Is it fair to say that it's a bunch of new midfielders who are finally learning to play together? Yes. But at the same time, you look at Liverpool, who are also putting together a new midfield, and they seem to be getting along a lot better than Chelsea are. So It's looks like it's the same situation as last year under Grant Potter. Chances created are up there. Possession is up there. Just still not able to score those goals. Maybe that changes once Christopher Nkunku's back healthy. But Nicholas Jackson looked good against Luton Town, but then did not look great against Nottingham Forest when he missed a sitter in front of the net. So maybe Chelsea will turn it around at some point this season. I mean, they have to for the amount of money they've spent yet again, but right now, probably the most disappointing team.
Yeah, I mean, my question is who's going to score the goals week in, week out for until Nkunku comes back. That's kind of been my question. And I like Cole Palmer as a prospect, but again, it's a pretty hefty price tag on him. And that's one of those situations where it's like you just got to get these guys out of their own head. And I do think Poch is a good man manager for that, but I also think you look at this squad and it is a team with depth that's built to compete in more competitions than Chelsea have on the docket right now. So it's just getting all these guys the amount of minutes that they need is going to be difficult. All right. For me, it's got to be, there were two teams. I thought Aston Villa had a really bad game against Liverpool, and they lost pretty badly to Newcastle, but I actually think the team is Newcastle. They're 1-0-3 right now. You lose to Manchester City away, that's fine. Look, and they only gave up the one goal in that game. That's a decent performance. To lose to Liverpool at home when you're a goal up and then you get Van Dijk sent off that's a bad loss. You cannot lose that game. And Liverpool was a team who beat them twice last year. One of a few teams that scored over 2 goals on them last year. So, and then you come in and you get slapped around by Brighton, who themselves had just gotten beat pretty bad by West Ham. I still believe that this Newcastle team is good. I still think that they have a good enough team to qualify for a top 4. But they did just get a brutal Champions League group. You've got PSG, AC Milan, Borussia Dortmund. Those are 2 clubs with PSG and Dortmund that have a ton of Champions League experience. And then a Milan team that was just in the semis. So that's a lot. That's a tall order. And it's going to be tough to get out of that group. I think Newcastle would probably be thrilled to come in 3rd and drop down to Europa. And I'm curious how they're going to handle European competition because obviously they've got ambitious owners. To finish outside of the top 6 right now, you can get Newcastle at +110, which
not bad.
It's not a terrible number. I'm not gonna take that, but it is something you can take. And I still think that there's a couple new signings over there that are yet to kind of get the full bite of the apple. Like Harvey Barnes hasn't played much. Yeah. We haven't seen Lewis Hall or Tino Livramento, either of them get a start yet. So there's still changes to be made at Newcastle. Speaking of new signings, who's impressed you the most so far at this early part of the Premier season?
Yeah, I mean, he's not really a new signing, but James Maddison is really good in a Tottenham jersey. Looks like he's the exact piece that Tottenham teams needed. They lost Kane, which was a big loss for them. But as you said earlier, playing Son at that number 9 and just having Maddison control that midfield, he's creating so many chances. And somebody else, yes, he's on the most disappointing team, and he was a late addition to end of last season, Enzo Fernandez. I mean, I think he's just looked really good. It just sucks that Chelsea aren't playing to the level that he clearly wants Chelsea to be at. I've been seeing rumors that he's unhappy, and I would be too for someone who's playing so well, but the team's sucking. So Maddison and Enzo probably for me.
Well, I'm going to go to the Liverpool midfield. We talked about they're coming together really well. And I do think a big part of that is, other than a defensive midfielder, Liverpool got the 2 8s kind of in immediately, and that's McAllister and Szoboszlai. But more particularly, Big Dom Szoboszlai has been excellent, man. Every single game, he's doing everything you need. He's making tackles. He's making good runs. He's doing set pieces. Scored his first goal over the weekend which was an absolute perfect hit against Aston Villa. Got Liverpool up early, and they never really looked like they were going to sacrifice that lead. He's been everything they needed. He's everywhere. I'm actually, Hungary are playing today. I actually took the under in that game because I'm actually betting on a Hungary game and not thinking that they're going to get rolled over because I have to keep an eye out on that one. Like I can't let our boy get hurt. He's super young. There's people who think He might even be able to take that right wing spot if Salah does go to Saudi after this summer. I don't know about that. I love him in midfield so far. Just a dude who is leaving it all out there every single moment that he gets to play. So pumped by that one. He looks great. All right, so let's jump to the Champions League real quick here. Notice the background change if you're watching on YouTube. There's the groups that are out. We've got all 8 groups. We've got the group of death, Group D, or I'm sorry, I think it's group. I don't know, whatever group it is.
Group
PSG.
F is the Group F is the PSG, Newcastle, Milan, and Dortmund. Yeah,
and I'm going to start there. I still think PSG win this group at plus 115. Mbappe's still there. You had Gonzalo Ramos. You had Kolo Muani. You had Dembele. They still had a good midfield. And you have a manager who's won this league before in Luis Enrique. They still have a good defense. I don't think it's going to be easy, but PSG have the benefit of being able to rotate pretty heavily when they have a Champions League game in the midweek. So they're going to be able to prioritize this. They're not in as much of a race as Newcastle are. They're not Dortmund trying to keep up with Bayern and Leipzig, et cetera, et cetera. And they're not even Milan, who are trying to win Serie A again. So I think the depth is the biggest thing there. So that's my first future. You got 2 futures from us on this one. We'll have a whole bunch more picks as we get closer to group stages, but just some early ones. What else do you like?
Yeah, so I also, with the quick one from that group, I like Milan to come out at plus 125. I do like that. Like we said, Newcastle probably going to finish, man, probably third. They'll be happy to finish third. Milan have looked really good so far in Serie A. Pulisic just looks great in an AC Milan uniform. Kind of pisses me off, I'm not going to lie. But my 2 main features here, I like Bayern plus 600 to win Champions League. I think it's a great number right now. Harry Kane has been fantastic for him, and you can get Kane to be the top goal scorer in the Champions League at plus 450. That's an alarming number in my opinion for a guy who's a pure goal scorer, one of the best goal scorers of our generation, to be quite honest with you. It's just he's been on a Tottenham team that's never won anything. So he doesn't get the same acclamation as a guy like Benzema, Mbappe, Erling Haaland, who've got those trophies to put next to their name. So I think it's a little disrespectful that Kane's at plus 450. I'm pairing that up with the Bayern on plus 600, and double Bayern future for me.
The best way for that one to hit, or like the most efficient way for that to hit, if you do get that Manchester City Bayern run in, like maybe in the quarterfinals, because that way you get all those Haaland goals, those potential goals further into the competition knocked off. So that's one you need to break away. But when you're parlaying those together, you're going to get that at a great number. So I agree with you. I think Bayern at plus 600 is probably the most value on the board. Seeing that Real Madrid didn't really go and sign a striker. Vinicius,
I was going to say Madrid too.
Yeah,
I mean, if there's a time to bet Madrid, it's now, because you know that they'll show up. You'll see them in the draw for the quarterfinals and semis. They'll be there.
I mean, look, they don't need Mbappe when you got Jude Bellingham scoring a goal every single game. So, I told you guys about Madrid early in the season. The other one, I will stick with a team in Spain. I kind of like a cheeky Real Sociedad to advance out of Group D. They're in there with Benfica, Inter, and Salzburg. You'd expect Inter to win that group. You'd expect Benfica. Benfica, I think, are in the minus to get out of that group. But I'm not saying this Benfica team isn't good, but they did just sell Gonzalo Ramos. We know they have pieces. They have Angel Di Maria, who's come back, but this is a retirement tour for him. So I don't think it's ridiculous to say that Sociedad can get out. They have some decent pieces. This is a team that finished in the top 4 in Spain last year. It's all about them getting hot at the right moment. A team that hasn't played in the Champions League in a long time. So I think that's a fun little flyer. I have a couple more that we will get into later on. Or I'll put them out on social. So just make sure you're following us at the Plus Money Pod, at Andrew Passaro, at Ani 323. So this will wrap it up from us. We're doing international picks on Twitter, on the socials, but it's so hard to predict those games before seeing a lineup, and who's hurt, who's not hurt, what coach is going to play everybody where. So those will be a day of things. So just make sure you're following along. Best of luck, everybody, this week. Stay positive. Be careful betting the first week of the NFL. And we'll catch you next week.